Hey, what's up, guys? It's Dave from the Millionaire YouTube channel, which is where you are right now. So welcome. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do, and you're going to learn a ton from this video and all the rest of our content about real estate, entrepreneurship, and personal finance. Now, today, what we are going to do is a little bit different. I'm going to just tell a few stories, some cautionary tales, if you will, of things that I've learned the hard way for why you need to make sure you have cash reserves. Now, first, what are cash reserves, right? Cash reserves just is money sitting in a bank account or an index fund or something that you have very quick access to. I mean, in the worst case scenario, it could probably be a credit card, but I don't recommend that at all, right? You want to have this money free and clear, sitting aside, and how much money that is really going to depend on your asset. For most people, I think $5,000 or $10,000 is a great starting point for cash reserves. But if you're buying $1 million building, you're going to want to have more than $10,000 sitting aside. And so it's going to scale, and you can build it. It can be something that you just intentionally build up before you start pulling cash flow, but you need to have cash reserves. And I would actually be willing to bet that this is more important than almost any other piece in your finances when investing in real estate. And I'll show you how. Let's say you've got two different people, right? And Bill over here buys a house with a VA loan, but he has 20% that he can put down. So he puts 20% down because he believes that this loan will be safer if he has 20% equity. Reasonable. I mean, if the market dips 10, 15, 20%, he's not underwater. So cool. I understand why he thinks that way. Then we got Ted. And yes, that's Bill and Ted from The Marvelous Adventure or whatever. And Ted has the same 20% down, but he chooses to use the VA loan with zero down, and he saves the 20% in his bank account as cash reserves. Now, Ted has no equity, so he acknowledges that if the market dips before he builds up equity through principal paydown, that he will potentially be underwater on that property very quickly. Here's the difference, right? Let's say that these were $100,000 houses. He put $20,000 down and has no money in cash reserves. Ted put no money down and has $20,000 in cash reserves. If the market dips 20%, they both are now at $80,000 is what their property is worth. Bill owes $80,000, so he's at break even. If he sold right now, he would lose money, but only because of the commission and the closing costs. But he wouldn't really lose that much, right? He'd lose $1,000, $2,000. It wouldn't be the end of the world. Ted has negative $20,000 in equity because he still owes around $100,000. And it's worth $80,000. So if he sold, he would have $21,000, $22,000 that he would have to come out of pocket. Now that's what scares people, because in this scenario, if I left it at just that, Ted has a massive risk because he could lose because he went and put all his money in. He didn't put any money down, so his house is underwater. But the reality is that I think Bill is in the riskier spot, and here's why. Let's say that in this same scenario, the market dipped that hard and one of them lost their job, or they both lost their job, because we're going to keep this congruent. So if they both lose their job, Bill has no money in reserves. He cannot make his mortgage payment. He's going to go into default, and if he can't figure out something very quickly, he's going to lose his house. He might not lose too much money because of the fact that he's not underwater, but he's going to lose the house. He's going to have a foreclosure. He's going to whatever. Ted loses his job as well, has no income. But he has $20,000 sitting in reserves. That mortgage payment is probably like $600. Ted can pay that mortgage for the next year and a half or 2 years out of his reserves. Who cares? He's fine. And so when people think about equity and they think about cash reserves, they almost always, there's this misconception that putting the money down in equity makes the property safer. I would say, yes, if you still have reserves, sure, there's some legitimacy to that. But I would say, no, I think the putting money down actually makes the loan safer for your bank. It makes it a better bet for your bank. But if you don't have money in reserves, it's setting yourself up for failure if your income stops, if your tenant vacates, if your income stops, if your job stops, if whatever, if you can't afford those mortgage payments. Now, that's one side to the cash reserves coin, and I get that argument all the time. I hear it in the VA loan side, so I wanted to bring that up. The other side, and this is the one that I just want to drive home the importance of cash reserves. My second investment property I ever bought was a 10 unit. And I actually just sold it a month and a half ago, so we're full cycle. It was great, had a great return. It was cash flow positive almost every year I owned it, and it did well for me. There was a time where if I had not had reserves, it would have been really hard to hold on to that building, because within a 2-month period, I had somebody pass away in one of the units, and a furnace go out, and actually two furnaces went out. It was $7,000 in expenses in 1 month, well, I guess 2 months, on a property that brought in $4,800 gross at peak. So before you factor in mortgages, utilities, because I paid utilities on this one, trash services, any vacancy, any expenses, any maintenances, before you factor any of that in, which is easily $3,500 a month, I was almost in the negative off just the furnaces and the death on that property for those 2 months, and substantially. Like, I mean, we're talking, I was probably brought in 5,000, down 7,500, 8,000 each month. Like, that could wreck your cash flow for the entire year, and it almost did. And if I hadn't had money sitting ready to put down and say, hey, we're going to fix this problem, that would have been very difficult. I would have struggled to pay my mortgage for both those months. Could have ended up in default. It took me a few months to get back to positive from that, right? And part of that, and I'll do a whole nother video on the death thing, because I've actually had several tenants die in buildings or while they were a part of buildings, and I don't think a lot of people understand how complex that can be for you and your management team to deal with the passing away of a tenant. It's there's a lot of rules for that, and it's a kind of an interesting process. I'll do a video on that as well. The other scenario, and this one's much more recent, and thankfully insurance is going to cover most of it because of vandalism. But some of you have seen that I had a property where a tenant was getting evicted because of, well, just a whole bunch of things. And when he left, he decided that it was a great way to earn a little side income for himself to take every single inch of copper wiring out of the house and sell the copper. And so the drywall is destroyed. There's no electric in the house. It actually, my hot water heater went out, and this was in January. We had a snowstorm. Pipe burst, so back room flooded from the entire water heater emptying itself into the back room. We've got subfloor that's destroyed, drywall that's destroyed throughout the house, drywall that's moldy, no electrical. The house was just a hoarder house, just trashed. We had to bring in a junk guy to come in and remove everything and open up the house. And ultimately, that's going to be a $25,000 or $30,000 repair. Now, already insurance has given us $16,000 to fix most of that, and they're working on an additional piece for the water side, so it should cover everything. But I'm still having to pay the mortgage and the mortgage, the utilities, and everything while the house is vacant, while we're waiting on all these repairs to get done. So I still have holding costs. And if we did not have cash reserves, this issue could be, tits up, like that'd be it. And so that's the importance of cash reserves. And one more just to drive it home, because we've got a million of these. Oh man, I've got a million of these. We actually, we got slapped with $62,000 in taxes that we didn't know we owed on a hotel we owned. So that's a big one. We didn't quite have reserves for that. We had to make payments, but we did, but we didn't want to deplete them for that. So, there's all kinds of issues. But the other one, that same 10 unit, I had a 120-gallon water heater go out, and it was like $12,000 to buy the water heater and get it installed in the middle of the building. And so, I want to tell these. I'm trying to, I want to tell some personal stories from lessons I've learned and try to help you understand the importance of making sure that you never take on the risk of ruin. You should never invest if you don't have some capital set aside that you could potentially lose. So if you're going to risk it all on an investment and you don't have cash reserves, that's very dangerous. And that's not a risk that's worth taking. So just want to follow up, let you guys know the importance of that. And I hope you got something out of this. So if you did, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And we're here to help you achieve your goals through real estate and really any other way. But I like real estate. So have a great day.